My name's Ashley and I'm a registered dietitian. I focus in PCOS, women's health and sports nutrition. I started my practice in 2019. I opened up my first practice in Joburg and I opened up my Cape Town practice last year in August. I work a lot with sports nutrition, so I work a lot with women in sports. And I work a lot with also like hormones in women. So I work a lot with PCOS, I work a lot with endometriosis, because often girls with PCOS and endo, they often have a lot of gut issues. I also work a lot with gut health and a lot of IBS. And then I also just work a lot with good general weight loss and helping people feel good in themselves and have a good relationship with food and feel good in their bodies, especially with women. I think that PCOS is often missed. And what I always see is that there's so many girls that have so many signs that they have PCOS and it's always so clear, but it's often that's so missed in so many people. It's like, like girls with PCOS, they often have like hair growth on their chin, they have hair growth on their chest, their lower back, their upper lip, and they'll go to their doctor and they'll be like, no, just go for laser. Or, the girls with PCOS, they miss a period and they get told, no, it's fine, you're still a teenager, like, don't worry. But then down the line, when the girls get married and they want to have kids, they can't fall pregnant for years. Yeah. Also things like weight gain, where it's like, people get told, like, no, just cut carbs or just lose weight, it's not that hard. And these girls are like struggling to get through like half a kilo off on the scale. And I think there's so much research on girls with PCOS having eating disorders. It's actually one of the conditions where it's the highest prevalence of eating disorders, because the girls don't understand their body. They don't understand how it works. They don't understand how their body functions. So they think that there's something wrong with them and they think it's them, and they skip meals and they try, when it's working for everyone else, it's just never working for them. And it's so disheartening. From a formal definition, PCOS is when you have high androgen levels. What does that mean? It's that when females have higher male hormones in their body, so they have higher levels of testosterone in their body. Often with girls, it is harder to pick up when they are younger, if that makes sense. And I think that's often why it's so important for girls to actually see a gynecologist at a younger age. And I think it's something that a lot of us, we don't do. In terms of like PCOS, is what can also happen is it's a very genetic thing. So what you'll see is if you guys have grandparents or aunts or siblings that have diabetes. Now, we're going to speak about this a little bit later on, but often people think PCOS is diabetes and it's not. And often people treat PCOS the way they treat diabetes. And even though there's overlaps, it's not the same. And I think what we need to be aware of is we need to be aware of if something is wrong, like you're missing periods or you're getting a lot of acne. Don't just treat it at a surface level. You've got to understand why it's happening. The second the girls get acne, it's let's go on the Raccutane. The second they're missing their periods, okay, let's put them on a pill. And I think that's the problem, is that the second something's off, understand that it's off. Don't ignore it, because often what happens is when the girls hit their 20s or their early 30s, they start figuring it out so late, when it's something that could be resolved so much earlier on. PCOS is very common in families who have a diabetes gene that runs through their family. So often, like if you see like grannies, grandpas, aunties, uncles, parents have been diagnosed with diabetes, is often that diabetes gene gets triggered in like a PCOS form in girls. Often in the past, PCOS has been missed. So it's very hard to say like, that the PCOS gene has been in the family for long, because it's not really something that we've been aware of for long, or it's been missed for a long time. Ways I often say to families is like, did your mother struggle falling pregnant, or did your granny struggle falling pregnant? And also back then it wasn't something people discussed. It was something that people were very ashamed of. Women that couldn't fall pregnant, it was very hidden. It was shameful. There was a lot of blame around it. So it wasn't something that's openly discussed that it was today. PCOS, however, is not diabetes. Let's just make that very clear. And often girls with PCOS get treated as a diabetic. But that is like, there's elements that are the same, but it's not the right way to treat them. With PCOS, as I always ask the girls when they see me on as a client in my practice, as I say, are there things that are normal for you that are not normal for other people? Where I say like, did you have acne as a kid? Did you have very cystic acne? The girls that have very cystic acne, they often have a lot of gut issues. So the next question I often ask the girls, I say like, do you struggle with constipation? Do you struggle with diarrhea? Do you struggle with a lot of bloating? I say a lot of painful bloating where you almost like hold your tummy and want to like crunch up into a ball. And they say, yeah, but I've had this my whole life. But how is that normal? How is being constipated your whole life okay? And that's exactly what I'm saying, is it's missed, it's perceived as normal. And they say to me, yeah, Ash, but I've been constipated my whole life. Like, yes, I only go to the bathroom once a week. Yes, I live on laxatives, but that's not normal. And we've got to start treating the problems, not the symptoms. It's the same with having PCOS. Often the girls don't have regular periods. So what happens? They just get put on the pill. Then their periods are regular. Then maybe they get married, they come off the pill, they want to have kids, and then we're left with this absolute nightmare where their periods are all over the show, they want to have kids, it takes time, we're seeing fertility specialists, but this is something that could have been addressed so much later on. PCOS doesn't disappear. You know, some people say, yeah, like I had PCOS, but it's gone now. Like, no, like it's not something that comes and goes. Yes, your cysts can come and go, and you can go through stages where you have cysts and you don't have cysts on your ovaries. PCOS isn't something that disappears. That's also why it's so important to focus on gut health when you have PCOS. And, you know, often the girls, because it's all in that same area, your hormones, your tummy, it's all like so related. Other things that's also very common with PCOS is weight gain in the tummy area. And, you know, often I say to people, it's like, you know, if you don't eat well and you don't exercise and you live an unhealthy life and you're a little bit overweight, well, yes, it's a cause effect. But often with the girls with PCOS, they eat well, they exercise, and they struggle, and it becomes so hard for them because, you know, everyone else around them eats so much worse than them. They do so much more less exercise than them, and they're putting 3 times the amount of work and they're seeing 1/5 of the result for it. And I think like with PCOS, we really have to focus on accepting your body, understanding your body. That's the biggest problem. We don't understand. We don't understand why our body's working this way. And what does that do? Is it makes us like feel despondent. It makes us feel like something's wrong. It feels like we're never going to get there, but it's because we get given the wrong formula. PCOS girls often get the advice of either diabetics or they get the advice of healthy people. And it's not that they're unhealthy people, but they can't take the advice of someone who doesn't have PCOS. They can't follow the same path. The symptoms get worse and the symptoms get better. So obviously you've got to treat the underlying, which is why having a good medical team around you is so, so important. I'm a dietitian. I'm all for diet. I believe in food. I believe the power in food, but I also believe the power in the medical side of it. And I think we'd be naive to ignore that. And that's why, like, if you have PCOS, you've got to have a GP that's on board with you. You've got to have a gynae that's on board with you. You know, you should even have a therapist that understands it, because you've got to have people who can relate to what you're saying, to relate to your body and help you live in your body in the right way. But I think coming back to your question is that when you live a healthier lifestyle, the symptoms are better. When you live an unhealthier lifestyle, the symptoms will always get worse. You know, I have a lot of girls with PCOS who see me and they are overweight and will lose weight, will eat well, will do the right exercise, and we'll talk about exercise later on, is that they fall pregnant and they have kids, and we avoid things like fertility treatments, but sometimes we can't. But what I'm saying is that if you live a healthier life, the symptoms will always be better. But I think like as girls with PCOS, it's so important that we give ourselves grace in that area. You know, what I mean by that is accept that, well, sometimes we're not going to be healthy, and sometimes life's going to get in the way and we are going to put on a bit of weight, but it's about having the knowledge in food to make good decisions sometimes with what you've got, and knowing how to approach food and knowing how to approach lifestyle. And sometimes just the smallest of changes can actually make the biggest of differences. I think with like PCOS, and I think in the world today, we always so focus on what to avoid. You know, the girls often come in and they see me and they say, Ash, what mustn't I eat? And like kind of my response to them, it's not what you mustn't eat. It's what do you need to eat? And there's so much food fear around PCOS. There's so much focus on all these things you mustn't do that we forget what we need to do. And that's what PCOS is about. It's like, are you including enough of the right stuff in your diet? So what does that look like? Fiber is so important. The reason fiber in your diet is so important is because it's such a strong anti-inflammatory. And any girl who has PCOS will understand this. It's the puffiness, it's that heaviness, it's that feeling of inflammation, that bad gut health. And that's why fiber is so important. With PCOS, you should always be aiming for around 25 grams of fiber a day. So like ways that you can achieve this. Focus on adding more fruits and veg into your diet. Don't be scared of the sugar and fruits, guys. Like, it's so overrated, and I'll touch on that a bit later. In this perfect PCOS world is that you should be including almost half a plate of veggies at each meal. So like I say to the girls, I'm not saying don't eat like a chicken mayo sami for lunch, but I'm saying like put lettuce and cucumber and tomato in that sandwich, bulk it up with a big veg salad on the side. You know, don't worry about the piece of toast for breakfast, but if you do, choose one that has fiber, choose a high fiber piece of toast. Add a protein, which I'm going to talk about now, but then in your eggs, for example, put mushrooms and tomato and spinach and onion, bulk it up. You know, veggie soups are amazing to bring in. You know, stir fries, you don't have to make it this bland boiled broccoli and cauliflower style mix. The next thing you really want to be focusing on is protein. To touch on, a lot of girls with PCOS have insulin resistance. And this is something that we have to address in eating. You've got to focus on adding protein to your diet. It's not about cutting carbs. You want to focus on including healthy fats. It's not about watching calories. With PCOS, you always want to focus on more protein-based meals. And the advice I give to all my clients is I say, at every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there has to be a protein. And at every snack, there has to be a protein. So for example, even if you guys enjoy something like all bran and milk for breakfast, I'm not saying don't have the carbs, but I'm saying like add a scoop of protein powder into the milk. You know, if you enjoy something like a sandwich for lunch, I'm not saying don't eat bread, but I'm saying have like a chicken mayo sandwich or a tuna mayo sandwich or an egg sandwich with some cottage cheese. Like focus on adding. Do you see how I'm going back to this adding, not taking away? The next thing you really want to focus on is also antioxidant rich foods and anti-inflammatory rich foods. You know, there's a lot of research around things like spearmint tea and peppermint teas and even green teas in managing inflammation for PCOS. So like I always say to the girls, try include these 1 or 2 of these with your meals in the day. It's very easy to get in a cup of herbal tea, you know, replacing a cup of coffee or your caffeinated teas with a herbal one. It's not that big of a difference to your life. You know, also things to focus on is omega-3 rich foods. This is the problem with South African omega-3. Is everyone's like, eat salmon 3 times a week. But like in South Africa, from a budget perspective, it's not an option for most people. So that's why with a lot of my PCOS girls, I am pro omega-3 supplements. I believe in food and I believe in the power of food, but I think sometimes from an affordability point of view, an omega-3 supplement can be important to add. You know, like if we were living in the UK or we're living in Europe where salmon is like almost cheaper than chicken, it's a completely different conversation we have. From our plant-based girls, the girls that are vegan and have PCOS, it's not a problem, but you've got to be including omega-3 rich foods, you know, like your flax seeds and your chia seeds, your olive oils, but even to take an omega-3 supplement on top of that, even being a vegan one, is super important. Girls with PCOS, insulin resistance, it like most have it then don't, if I can be honest with you. And I think like with insulin resistance, it's also important of eating right for your insulin. So now, like the tips I could kind of give you is if you have insulin resistance, same like I said earlier, you've got to have protein at each meal, like it's a given. There's a lot of very cool research on the order that you eat your food at a meal and how that can actually better manage your insulin levels. So what you should be doing is you should be starting off your meal with fiber. So like this is where the veg-based starters come in. And there's a lot of research that shows that girls that start their meal with a veg or fiber-based starter, their insulin spike in that meal is significantly less. So like just me throwing some ideas out there, it's like having like a bowl of veggie soup before eating your meal would be amazing, or a salad or some stir fry or even some roast veg. You know, even if you want to do like some baby cucumbers and carrots with some hummus and tzatziki. I don't mind the hummus and tzatziki, but again, it's more about including the veg and the fiber as a starter. The next food group that you should be eating is your protein. And the last food group you should be eating is your starch. Now think of like a typical South African meal. You have like chicken, potatoes, and salad. What do? First thing we eat is the potatoes on our plate. Whew, sugar goes up. Then, okay, you eat the protein and the fiber and it starts to come down. But if you start with the protein and fiber, it never ever goes up and you never actually get that spike. So that's why if you can structure your food like that, where you go first fiber, second protein, third starch, you'll manage your insulin much better. Now, what is the biggest, let's call it side effect for the sake of this conversation, what is the biggest side effect of insulin resistance? Hunger, sugar cravings. Eating your food like that prevents it so much. Your carbs shouldn't be excluded, but they should be seen as a dessert. And where do people go wrong? They get hungry and they start their meal on carbs. I always say to my girls, I don't care if you have a chocolate mousse. I don't care if you have a piece of cake. From an insulin perspective, is if you have like a chicken salad first and you have the chocolate mousse after, it's not really going to affect your insulin that much. It's when you're hungry, you're starving, you open up the fridge and you start with the chocolate mousse that it's going to go wrong. So it's always about having those type of foods at the end of your meal, because by then your insulin's much more controlled. Protein and fiber are the two food groups that will manage your insulin and manage your cravings. Test it out, try it. Go home, have a piece of toast with butter on and see how long it takes you to get hungry. Then later on, have a piece of toast that's whole wheat with chicken mayo and a salad and see how much longer it takes you to get hungry. A good meal should last you 3 to 4 hours before you even think about food again. If you're thinking about food before or after, like sooner than that, it means you're not eating enough protein or you're not eating enough fiber and you need to start upping your food. When you start off your meal with fiber, it almost lines the gut. Imagine like a piece of mesh going around your gut. So what fiber does is it slows the rate of absorption of food going into your blood sugar system. So that's why you feel fuller for longer, because it stretches that period out of food absorption. Whereas when you start with the carb, it hits your system much faster. Which is, I guess, like why before exercise you want to take in carbs. You want that quick burst of energy. But when you're looking at managing your insulin and managing your cravings and managing your hunger, you want that slower, longer release of food. When it comes to exercise, there's no right exercise and wrong exercise. You know, everyone often comes to me and they say, Ash, like, I'm doing weights, is it okay? Or I'm running, is it okay? And with PCOS, is this lot of information going out there where it's like, don't do strength training, it's too inflammatory, or don't run because it's too much pressure on the body, or do yoga, no, don't do yoga because you're not burning enough calories. And there's so much conflicting evidence. And you know what the truth is? It's just about moving. And what I say to the girls is, if you can move consistently throughout your days and your weeks, that's the right exercise. Every PCOS body is different. There's no body that's the same. And I say to the girls, like, I can't give you that advice. You've got to go try different things and you've got to figure out what you feel the best from. You know, I have some clients that run and they feel amazing and their serotonin's high. And I have some girls that after a run, they actually just want to end their week and crawl into bed and wake up next Monday. And then, you know, I have some girls that go to yoga and feel amazing and they say, Ash, you know, I feel so good and I sleep so well and my energy's great from it. And I have some girls that go to yoga and they're like, Ash, I don't feel like I did a workout. Like, what was that? And I think when it comes to exercise, it's not about this versus that, but it's actually just about day-to-day movement. And I think this is very personal opinion. I think in South Africa, we focus too much on the gym. I think we're so focused on going to that gym and that hour of exercise a day. You know, in South Africa, we have a huge obesity problem here. We have huge chronic issues in South Africa. We're one of the most unhealthy populations in the world at the moment, which is like crazy to think about it. But in my opinion, why is it like that? We drive everywhere. You know, like, think of like if you lived in London, you'd lived in this teeny weeny little apartment, you'd walk to the train station, you'd stand on your way to work, you'd walk to work, you'd fetch your kids from school, you'd walk them home, you'd walk to the grocery stores, you'd carry your groceries. Think of it like this. I mean, if you guys all look down at your watch right now, I bet you most of you aren't sitting above 2,000-3,000 steps a day, for those of you that work in a sedentary job. And that's what it is. It's the fact that we don't move. There's no right exercise and wrong exercise. It's literally just about moving your body. And what I say to the girls is, stop trying to find an hour in your day to train. Start moving more in your day. If you work at a desk, use a standing desk. I mean, it's not taking up much more of your day. I'm not saying stand for 8 hours, but do 15 minutes standing, 15 minutes sitting. You know, stop using the lifts, use the stairs. I know it sounds dumb. I know it seems too good to be true, but it actually makes a difference. You know, even things like parking your car at the back of a parking lot. Like, walking your kids into the classroom. If you go to the mall, don't park right outside the grocery store, like park at the back of the center and walk through the center. It's all those little things that make a difference. And I think today our time is so precious. And you know, most women today, we do work. There's very few women today that maybe don't work a 9 to 5. And now when you're dropping kids at school, you're working a 9 to 5, you're coming home, you're cooking, you're still taking on those female responsibilities, which are there for a lot of women. Like that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying is that to go now say find an hour, I mean, it's not there. So stop trying to find that hour and just move in a way that feels good. I think there's a lot of power in exercise, and exercise will only do your insulin better. It will only do your mood better. And you know what often people, I find when they exercise well, they naturally eat well because they feel better. Like very few people will come out of a yoga class and be like, let me go have some chocolate ice cream. You know, or very few people will come back from a run and be like, I want to eat, like, I'm going to order McDonald's. I think that like exercise makes you feel good. It makes you move. It makes you feel good about yourself. It gives you a good energy boost. And naturally people do eat better. But I think it can't be one or the other. And PCOS, it's something you treat with lifestyle changes. So what you've got to do is you've got to make sustainable changes. You know, I'm not saying like intermittent fasting is bad, but I'm saying like don't do it if you can't do it every day. And I'm not saying that I don't want you also to exercise 7 times a week in the gym because you can't keep that up. I always say to everyone, set the bar low so you achieve. And you can raise the bar as you go, as you want to achieve more and more, but just start with even once a week. You know, even say to the girls with food, never have like a stuff it mentality. Never say, well, you know, I've eaten croissant for breakfast, so I may as well just end off the day and go tilt. You know, like even if you eat 1 meal right and 4 meals wrong, at least you've got that 1 meal that went right. And I think we need to stop going in for this all and nothing approach, and we need to start really finding that middle ground. Girls with PCOS, we have one of the highest rates of eating disorders. Why is that? Because we don't get taught about our body. Most of the girls, when they say, Ash, I have PCOS, I say, okay, tell me what PCOS is. They're like, diabetes, I can't fall pregnant, I'm never going to be thin, I'm always going to be overweight. It's because we don't get the information on it. And I think what's the scariest thing? It's not understanding your body. It's not understanding, why do I have acne? Why do I have hair in my face? Why am I struggling to lose weight? Why am I exhausted at night but can't fall asleep? Why am I waking up in the middle of the night? You know, why am I waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning starving and then waking up at 8 o'clock and I can't even stomach breakfast? And I think what happens is there becomes this distrust between a female and her body. And it becomes that you don't even understand the body you're living in, whereas everyone else around you understands theirs. And it's because you're not getting the right information. So as someone with PCOS, you've got to have a team around you that understands what it is. And unfortunately, I think in South Africa, I think a lot of healthcare professionals don't really understand it to its true extent. And I think we as healthcare professionals have a very long way to go. Inositols are the most underrated supplement for PCOS, and not enough girls understand it or even know about it to that extent. Whenever I see girls with PCOS in my practice, I always say to them, are you on inositols? And they're like, what? Like, what is that? Inositols are amazing for female hormones. There is so much research on it and so much developing research on it. In my opinion, inositols are not just for girls with PCOS. I believe every female should be taking inositols. For PCOS specifically, you always want to take a myo to D-chiroinositol in a 40:1 ratio. Now this ratio is very important. There's a lot of inositol supplements out there, and then the girls grab the wrong ones, but you've got to make sure you're taking it in that ratio, because that's the ratio that's right for you with PCOS. And that goes back to my statement, we've got to start taking the wrong information. You've got to start focusing on PCOS, treating your symptoms and working with your body. So if you're taking an inositol that's not in that ratio, it's not going to work the way you want it to. The next thing is you also don't want a higher dose than that, because then you get things like diarrhea, you get things like headaches, you get things like sugar lows, hypoglycemia. With inositols, it is a herbal supplement. It's not a medication where you're given like all these funny dosages and you can get different scripts for it. So what I always tell my girls to do is I say to them, start with half a sachet and build up to a full sachet and ease into it. Because sometimes if you start full force, you can get a little bit of sugar lows in it. Does that make sense? Things that will help with that, if you do get sugar lows with the inositols, because it does manage your sugars, one of the main things is it manages your insulin, which we spoke about earlier. It is one of the symptoms, side effects, call it what you will, for PCOS. So what also helps is to actually take it with food. You can mix it into food. A lot of my girls take the inositols and they mix it into yogurt, or they mix it into oats, or they mix it into cereals, or into their smoothies. Like, you can mix it into things. You can mix it into water, like whatever works for you. In terms of the inositols, it helps with cholesterol. It helps with sleep. It helps with insulin resistance. Because it helps balancing out your hormones indirectly, weight loss will be a byproduct of taking inositols. It is not a weight loss drug, but because it will get your hormones right, it helps with androgens, which is like the high testosterone levels, it helps your insulin. Weight loss will be a byproduct of taking inositols. It also helps with thyroid issues. A lot of girls with PCOS, they often do have thyroid problems. So taking the inositols, it's also shown to help with your thyroid. There's a lot of other supplements that can also help with PCOS. This includes things like omega-3, things like berberine. Berberine is something that's amazing, but it's something that I normally tell my girls to take after being on inositols first. I don't like you guys to take everything in one blow and then you don't know what's working, what's not working. So berberine's also amazing. It further helps the insulin resistance. It further helps the sugar cravings. Berberine's also amazing for girls that get very bad PMS symptoms around their period and very bad sugar cravings around their period. But sometimes the berberine dosages are too high for the inositol. So again, start with half a dose and build up, because sometimes it can be too much good for your insulin, if that makes sense. And the last one that has a lot of research around also is NAC, also known as NAC. And NAC also helps with your hormones, it helps with sleep, it helps with mood. There's very interesting research coming out on NAC, on with PCOS, every girl with PCOS will understand me. We get these highs, and then we get these crashing lows of mood, and you feel like you're going crazy, like your moods are all over the show. NAC has really been shown to help with that as well. But I think what's so exciting is the PCOS field, it is evolving. I think we're talking about it more as women. I think we're becoming more aware of it. I think girls aren't ashamed of it anymore. If you're skipping your period, it's not like something that's hidden and mommy's saying, okay, wait 6 months and let's see what goes on. You go straight to your doctor today. You go straight to your gynae today. And I think the field in PCOS is amazing. And I think for PCOS girls, there's a lot more hope than what there's ever been.